The second I saw that neon orange HOA violation notice duct taped to my mailbox, I knew Eleanor Simmons was back on her power trip. I pulled it off and read the absurd reason. Unauthorized use of HOA trail access, $250 fine. I nearly laughed out loud. My name's Hayden Trask. I'm a contractor, not one of those guys who picks fights for fun, but I've never been one to sit back when someone steps over the line. Especially not someone like Eleanor, a woman in her late 50s with a platinum bob, militant clipboard, and the kind of sunglasses you usually only see on cops in old action movies. She's the self-appointed queen of our HOA, and no one questions her because they're all afraid of her weekly compliance sweeps. Here's the kicker. The trail she was talking about, it runs behind my property, but I own the little stretch of land with the only paved entrance to it. Years ago, the HOA tried to buy it from the previous owner. He refused and instead added a toll system with a camera, $3 per person per use. That setup came with the house when I bought it. I never cared much who used it, but the system logs every entry and charges the HOA monthly. So when Eleanor slapped me with that ridiculous fine, I knew exactly what to do. I walked over to the HOA office the next day with a folder full of toll logs and a printed invoice from the last quarter. Eleanor was sitting at her desk when I walked in, surrounded by fake succulents and framed photos of her cat. She looked up like she'd just smelled something unpleasant. "Hayden," she said flatly, "I assume you're here about your violation. I will remind you, HOA regulations clearly prohibit private residents from charging access to communal trails." I handed her the invoice. "That's cute, Eleanor, but I'm not charging residents. You are. The HOA's been paying these charges for over a year. The trail entrance is on my land." "You know it, I know it, and so does the county assessor." She froze, eyes darting over the invoice, then she tried to save face. "Well, this is highly irregular. We'll need to reevaluate the agreement. It might be void." "Nope," I said. "It's not an agreement, it's a toll. You're free to stop using my land anytime, but if you keep sending people through, the charges stand." She stared at the paper like it had personally insulted her. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head. "You're not allowed to charge neighbors for using HOA property." I leaned on the counter. "Then maybe stop routing them through my property. Or, better idea, build your own trailhead. I'm sure the board would love the expense." Eleanor didn't respond. She just pursed her lips and reached for her phone, probably to call someone who wouldn't tell her she was wrong. Too late. I was already walking out. I didn't think it'd end there, though. Eleanor didn't like being embarrassed, especially not in her own office. And definitely not by someone she'd tried to fine. 3 days after I handed Eleanor the toll invoice, something changed. I noticed it when I stepped out early one morning to load up my truck. The HOA maintenance crew, 2 guys in polos and khakis that somehow always looked too clean to have done any actual work, were parked near the trail entrance, standing around like they were waiting for someone. One held a tape measure, the other had a clipboard. They didn't say a word to me, just kept glancing at the trailhead gate like it owed them an explanation. I didn't engage. I figured Eleanor had sent them on a fishing expedition. Let them measure all they wanted. That land was mine, and the plat map in my safe said so in black and white. But something about their presence didn't sit right. They weren't just inspecting. They were stalling, watching. By noon, I had my answer. A flatbed truck rolled up with a prefab aluminum gate and a pair of concrete footings. It didn't take a genius to figure it out. They were trying to install a new trail entry point, right on the border behind my yard. Only problem? That border was still 6 feet into my parcel. I walked over, arms crossed, and caught the contractor mid-swing with a post digger. "You got a permit for this?" I asked. He looked surprised. Young guy, probably subcontracted. "HOA said it was pre-approved." "Did they show you the property lines?" He hesitated. "They gave me a stake map." "Yeah, mind showing it?" He retrieved a folded diagram from the truck. I scanned it and almost laughed. The stakes were shifted east by about 10 feet, conveniently pushing the new trailhead just far enough into my land to bypass the toll system. Eleanor hadn't just faked a map, she'd forged a permit application to make it look legit. I took a photo of the map, then called the county zoning office. 20 minutes later, a field compliance officer named Dana rolled up. She was a no-nonsense type, clipboard in hand and mirrored aviators that made Eleanor's look like toy store knockoffs. "You're the property owner?" Dana asked. "Right here," I said, handing her the original plat map and a copy of my deed. She compared everything, then turned to the contractor. "You're building on the wrong side of the easement. That's trespassing. Shut it down." The contractor didn't argue. He packed up and left without another word. But Dana wasn't done. She took photos, noted the altered stake map, and told me she was filing a report with the county prosecutor. "Forging utility or zoning documents is a felony," she said. That's when it stopped being funny. Later that afternoon, I drove to the community center where the HOA board was holding its monthly meeting. I wasn't on the agenda. Didn't matter. I walked in and waited until the open forum part rolled around. The board sat behind a long table on the stage, 5 people in matching navy vests like they were part of a yacht club that had never seen water. Eleanor sat dead center, clipboard in her lap, acting like nothing had happened. "Mr. Trask," she said when I stood. "Please keep your comments to under 2 minutes." "No problem," I said. "I just wanted to clarify something for the record. Last week, the HOA attempted to install a trailhead on my private property using a falsified zoning map. Today, that action was shut down by county officials and is now under investigation for document fraud. For those unaware, that's a crime." The room went silent. Eleanor's eyes flicked to the other board members, but none of them met her gaze. "And just so we're clear," I continued, "if anyone from the HOA sets foot on my land again, I'll pursue charges for trespass and file a restraining order. I've already submitted the paperwork to the sheriff's office." A man near the front, someone I'd seen walking the trail with his dog most mornings, raised his hand. "Is it true the HOA's been paying toll fees all this time?" I nodded. "And I've got the invoices to prove it, every quarter. They've been using HOA funds to pay for access, then tried to backdoor a new entrance to dodge the cost." Now the murmurs started. A woman near the back stood up. "Where's that money coming from? I didn't vote for that." Another voice. "We had a dues increase last fall." "Was that part of it?" Eleanor tried to cut in. "These are internal matters." "No," I said. "These are financial decisions that affect every homeowner in this room, and apparently they were made without a vote. You might want to check your bylaws." That hit like a hammer. Someone pulled out their phone and started reading the HOA charter aloud. A few others clustered together, whispering furiously. One of the other board members, Gary, a retired auditor who always looked vaguely terrified to be on the board, stood up and cleared his throat. "I wasn't informed about any trail construction," he said, "or toll payments. This is the first I'm hearing of it." Eleanor looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "We'll address this internally." "No, you won't," I said, "because I've already submitted everything to the county. They're investigating the forged documents. If I were you, I'd get a lawyer." I walked out before she could respond. The crowd didn't follow me, but I heard someone shout, "Motion to suspend the president pending investigation." The next morning, a county sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. Not to question me, to ask if I'd be willing to testify. Apparently, Eleanor had filed the gate permit under the HOA's name using her own digital signature and claimed the board had voted on it. They hadn't, even worse. She'd pulled funds from the HOA reserve account to pay for the new gate construction, an account that required 2 board signatures. She'd either forged the second one or manipulated Gary into signing a blank form weeks earlier. The deputy handed me a subpoena and said the DA would call within a week. By the weekend, Eleanor's name was removed from the community board's website. A notice went out that she was on leave pending review. And just like that, her iron grip on the neighborhood cracked, but I wasn't done yet. Because if she dipped into the reserve fund without authorization, there were likely other misappropriations hiding in the books. And I had a friend who specialized in forensic accounting. He owed me a favor. By Tuesday, my buddy Wes, former IRS auditor turned freelance forensic accountant, was sitting at my kitchen table with a manila folder, a black coffee, and a look that said he'd found something ugly. "Hayden," he said, flipping through pages like he already knew the ending, "this HOA's financials are a landfill. No consistency, no double sign-offs, and half of these expense codes don't even match their charter." I leaned over to look. "What are we talking? Sloppy bookkeeping or criminal?" He tapped one column with the edge of his pen. "Let's put it this way, if I ran this audit for the IRS, I'd have already flagged it for embezzlement. See here. There's a monthly landscaping fee paid to a company called Greenline Solutions." Okay, they don't exist. I cross-checked the business license, nothing registered in the state under that name. But guess who owns a DBA with that exact spelling? I tilted my head. Don't say it. Eleanor Simmons. Filed last year under her maiden name. She's been paying herself nearly $3,000 a month. I let out a low whistle and sat back. That explains the new Lexus, Wes kept going. It gets worse. There's a series of community improvement grants listed under discretionary funds. They're marked as reimbursements, no attached receipts, no board vote, nothing. Nearly $40,000 across 15 months. And where did that money go? Split between two personal checking accounts. One of them's in her name. The other is in the name of a Winston Simmons. Her cat, Wes grinned without humor. Her dead husband. He passed 3 years ago, but the account was opened last fall. I stood and rubbed my jaw. You think she's laundering through fake vendors? She's not even hiding it well. Honestly, I think she believed no one would ever check. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I grabbed my phone and called Dana, the county compliance officer who'd shut down the trailhead construction. I gave her a quick summary and asked if she had a contact at the district attorney's office. "Already flagged the forged permit," she said. "But if you have financial fraud on top of zoning violations, the Economic Crimes Unit will take it seriously. Email me what you've got, I'll route it." Wes compiled the documents into a clean report. By Wednesday morning, I'd sent it to Dana and copied the county DA. I didn't expect an overnight response, but I didn't have to wait long. That night, 2 unmarked cars rolled up to the HOA office just as the board was finishing a closed-door session. I was watching from my truck, parked across the street under a dying oak. The officers walked in calmly and walked out 10 minutes later with Eleanor in handcuffs. No drama. No shouting. Just cold steel on wrists and the sound of a door closing behind her. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Someone had filmed the arrest from their second-floor window and uploaded it to a local Facebook group. Within hours, half the community knew about the embezzlement, the fake vendor, and the trailhead stunt. But what really lit the fire was the detail about the reserve fund. Turns out, Eleanor had been quietly draining the emergency maintenance fund, the same one meant for infrastructure repairs, storm damage, and legal defense. She'd used it for everything from spa packages to luxury furniture. There was even a charge for a consulting retainer that turned out to be her nephew's garage band. By Friday, the board held an emergency town hall meeting. I didn't plan to speak, but when I saw Gary, the board member who'd unknowingly signed off on one of Eleanor's fake withdrawals, standing alone near the podium with a folder clutched to his chest, I decided to show up. He cleared his throat as the room quieted. "I want to begin by apologizing. I was misled. I believed I was signing off on budget reallocations for the trail maintenance project. I see now that those forms were repurposed for unauthorized withdrawals." Someone in the crowd shouted, "You didn't read what you signed." Gary didn't flinch. "I trusted the board president to present accurate documentation. That was a mistake. I've since met with a CPA and I've passed everything to the county financial crimes unit. They've assured me the investigation is ongoing and now includes additional parties." That last part caught my attention. Additional, he nodded, eyes scanning the crowd. Eleanor didn't act alone. At least 2 other board members co-signed reimbursement forms. Whether they were complicit or just careless, that's for the DA to decide. A woman in the 3rd row stood up. I recognized her, Rachel, a single mom who worked night shifts at the hospital. So what happens now? Are our dues going up again to cover her theft? A murmur of concern rippled through the room. Gary shook his head. We're freezing all non-essential expenditures. A forensic audit is being commissioned, and we're petitioning to dissolve the current board structure under Article 19 of the Charter. Effective immediately, the HOA will operate under interim oversight by a third-party fiduciary. That got a reaction. People leaned forward, murmuring approval or disbelief. He continued. We will also be drafting a new bylaw amendment that requires homeowner oversight on all expenditures above $500, and we will hold open elections for all board seats in 60 days. That's when I raised my hand. Gary pointed to me. Hayden, I've got 2 things. First, I'd like to formally request that the HOA discontinue use of the trail entrance behind my property. The toll system will remain in place, but if the board chooses to stop paying the fees, I'll consider closing access altogether. Gary nodded. Duly noted. Second, I said, glancing around the room, I think we need to make sure this never happens again. I propose we add a clause requiring that all board meetings be recorded and made available online within 48 hours. No more closed-door decisions. That got a round of applause. Rachel raised her hand again. Can we also vote to bar former board members from rejoining if they are under investigation or convicted of fraud? Gary scribbled it down. We'll add that to the draft. After the meeting, several neighbors came up to shake my hand. One guy, a retired Marine named Lopez, offered to help install motion lighting near the trail gate, just in case anyone else gets ideas. I didn't say no. Over the next week, things moved fast. The DA filed formal charges against Eleanor for embezzlement, forgery, and criminal misrepresentation. Her bail was set high enough to keep her behind bars for a while. 2 other board members resigned quietly, both under a cloud of suspicion. The interim fiduciary, a woman named Sylvia with the demeanor of a federal judge, took over operations and froze all HOA accounts pending audit results. Wes's report became the cornerstone of the investigation. He was asked to testify before the county grand jury, and I was called in to verify the chain of events leading to the forged permit. The DA's office made it clear they were building an airtight case. And just when I thought the chaos had peaked, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a legal firm representing a group of homeowners in a different neighborhood 2 miles away. They'd seen the video, read the articles, and discovered their own HOA had a similar Green Line Solutions landscaping vendor on their books. Eleanor had been double-dipping, running the same scam in multiple neighborhoods under different aliases. The letter asked if I'd be willing to provide documentation for a class action suit. I didn't hesitate. I sent over everything. The neighborhood changed after that. People who used to keep their heads down started showing up at meetings. Neighbors actually talked to each other. Someone even started a newsletter, a real one, not the HOA propaganda sheet Eleanor used to hand out every quarter. As for the trail, I left the toll system in place, but I added a new sign. Community access available upon mutual respect. The gate stayed open, but now people knocked on the door first. They asked. And for the first time since I moved in, it felt like we were neighbors, not tenants of a petty tyrant with a clipboard. And Eleanor, she's got a different kind of gate now. One made of bars. The first time I saw Sylvia, the interim fiduciary appointed to oversee the HOA, I was surprised by how calm she looked walking into a storm she didn't cause. Tall, silver hair in a tight braid, clipboard under one arm, phone in the other. She walked into the mess like she'd been cleaning up other people's disasters since birth. Probably had. The first thing she did was cut off access to the HOA's internal files and have a locksmith change the office locks. The second thing, she asked every resident to bring forward any documentation they had: emails, letters, notices, anything signed by Eleanor or her remaining appointees. I gave her a flash drive with everything I'd collected over the past year, including the toll payment logs and the original trailhead footage. That's when things escalated again. Just before sunset on a Wednesday, 2 unmarked black sedans pulled up to the community center. This time, 3 agents stepped out, badges clipped to belts, no hesitation. They walked straight into the HOA's records room, the old one that used to be locked behind a keypad Eleanor insisted only she needed access to. Sylvia had already disabled it. They stayed for over an hour. When they walked out, they were carrying 4 heavy-duty evidence boxes and a laptop. One of the agents paused to speak quietly with Sylvia before leaving. She looked at the ground, then at the sky, then just nodded. The next day, Sylvia called a special meeting, not in the community center, too cramped. She booked the gymnasium at the local charter school and rented a microphone. People filled the folding chairs fast. Some even stood in the back. I sat near the front with Wes, who was now helping the county accountant compile everything into a digital audit trail. Sylvia stepped up to the mic without ceremony. "There are new developments," she said. "The county has handed this case to the federal level. The Department of Justice is now involved." That woke the room up. "We've discovered that the fraudulent vendor payments extended beyond this HOA. At least 4 other associations in surrounding counties received invoices from fictitious companies registered under Eleanor Simmons' name or aliases tied to her. The total known embezzlement exceeds $260,000. A man in the back let out a long breath. Someone dropped a water bottle. Sylvia waited until the noise settled. "There's more." This afternoon, a sealed indictment was filed. Eleanor Simmons is being charged with wire fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice, and using a deceased person's identity in the commission of a crime. The room stayed dead quiet. She used her late husband's name to open accounts and funnel association funds. That qualifies as federal identity fraud. She's facing a minimum of 15 years if convicted. Sylvia paused, then said something I hadn't expected. "I want to acknowledge the resident who triggered this investigation by refusing to back down when his property rights were violated. Mr. Hayden Trask." I didn't stand, didn't wave, just nodded once while avoiding every eye turned toward me. Sylvia continued. "Because of his persistence, this community is no longer under the control of a corrupt individual, but we still have work to do. We'll need to rebuild our financial systems from zero, and we'll need an entirely new board. That process starts now." The meeting shifted from shock to logistics. Sylvia passed around sign-up sheets for interim committees: budget, legal, community outreach. Rachel, the hospital worker, volunteered to help with communications. Gary, the former board member, stepped up to audit the transition with Wes's oversight. Even Lopez, the retired Marine, offered to help coordinate vendor vetting for landscaping, since half the current contracts were now under investigation. Afterward, as people filtered out under the gym's flickering lights, Sylvia approached me. "You planning to run for a seat?" she asked. I shook my head. "I build houses, not policies. You sure? People listen when you talk. Maybe, but I'd rather keep my sanity." She nodded once, then handed me a sealed envelope. "This is from the DOJ. You're listed as a primary witness. They'll be contacting you directly." I took it, but didn't open it. The next few weeks were a blur. The trail access stayed quiet, no new signs, no more unauthorized construction. I installed a new camera system just for peace of mind, but it never caught anything more threatening than a raccoon. The toll gate remained operational, but I lowered the fee to $1 per user. People appreciated the gesture, and I appreciated that they asked before using it now. The forensic audit wrapped 10 days later. Wes handed off the full report to the DOJ, and Sylvia released a summary to the neighborhood. It confirmed everything: fraudulent reimbursements, ghost vendors, forged board approvals. The most damning piece was a series of internal emails showing Eleanor directed another board member to fabricate votes for emergency expenditures. That board member, a man named Curtis, was arrested 2 days after the report went public. I saw him being led out of his house in cuffs. He looked surprised. I wasn't. In the final week of the month, the community held its first official election under the new oversight rules. Open ballots, live-streamed counting, candidate disclosures. No more closed doors or handshake deals in the back room of the HOA office. Rachel won a seat, so did Lopez. Gary chose not to run again but stayed on as a volunteer auditor. I helped install a permanent PA system in the community center using leftover materials from a job site in town. Someone brought cupcakes. On a clear Saturday morning, I got a knock at the door. A woman I didn't recognize stood there, a little older than me, denim jacket, clipboard in hand. "Are you the homeowner with the toll gate?" "That's me, yeah," she smiled. "I'm Lauren. I live over on Aspen Court. I just wanted to say thank you. I used to avoid trail walks because of how things were run. Now my daughter and I go every weekend." I nodded, unsure what to say. She handed me a paper. "We're organizing a neighborhood cleanup. Thought you might want to join." I looked down at the flyer. Simple, handwritten. "Trash bags, gloves, coffee provided." "I'll be there," I said. As she turned to leave, she added, "Oh, and thank you for keeping your gate open." Most people would have shut it down after what they pulled. I watched her walk down the drive, then glanced at the gate. Just visible beyond the fence line, it stayed open. Not because I had to, but because I wanted it that way. The DOJ case proceeded quietly from that point on. I gave my statement, provided digital evidence, and sat through one closed hearing. Eleanor pled guilty to 5 of the 13 charges. She cut a deal to avoid trial, but the sentencing was stiff. 8 years with no possibility of parole in the first 5, restitution ordered in full. Her assets, what was left of them, were liquidated to begin paying it off. The trail behind my house eventually got a new official sign. Not from the HOA, but from the county. Public access route maintained by community partnership. It was the kind of sign that meant something now. By the time spring rolled around, the neighborhood looked different. Not in the physical sense, but in how people acted. Neighbors waved more. Kids rode bikes without parents staring out windows in fear of another complaint letter. I saw Rachel laughing over lemonade with Sylvia near the community center one afternoon, a stack of flyers between them and a dog curled under the table, and me. I went back to work. Built a deck for the new family on Maple Drive. Helped Lopez fix his roof after a storm blew half his shingles into the next yard. Life went on. Better than before, the toll gate stayed, but it wasn't about the money anymore. It was a quiet reminder. You stand your ground, you document everything, and you never let a clipboard bully tell you what you can and can't do on land you paid for. Justice came. Not overnight, not easy, but it came.